Welcome to Laser's presentation on completing your documents. Hello, my name is Delia Hernandez. I'll be going over your retirement documents and information you need to know in order to complete your retirement package. This presentation is meant for active city members who applied for the city's Separation Incentive Program and have received an assigned retirement effective date and a retirement package with all the retirement forms from Lacers. Before we get started, please note that throughout the presentation, you will notice that the forms will request your Social Security number. However, due to recent updates, your forms in your packet will ask for your employee identification number. Please be certain to complete the forms with the information requested. We will be going over the areas of retirement related to your retirement package. Part 1, required documents, application, member information forms, and dissolution. Part 2, service credit purchases, reciprocity, and missing contributions. Part 3, your retirement date, calculating your allowance, payroll, and payment options. Part 4, beneficiary forms, tax information, and tax elections. Part 5, optional larger annuity program. Part 6, other important information. And Part 7, final reminders. Before we get started, I recommend that you listen to each part, then pause and complete all the necessary information needed in that section before you move forward. If you make a mistake and need a new form, you can reprint the form from your retirement package email. If you're unable to reprint a new form, don't worry. Continue to complete all that you can and contact Lacers later for a new form. You can also simply line out the error and initial it. Please do not use whiteout. If you do, your form will be returned to you. Let's get started. Part 1, required documents, application, and member information. Required documents. The first form we'll be reviewing is the Required Documents form. This form explains what documents you and your spouse or domestic partner will need to provide. For the purpose of this presentation, I will focus on 3 documents that give members the most trouble: marriage license, proof of birth, and divorce documents. I will review the marriage and divorce documents first, then move on to the proof of birth. If you're currently married, you will need to provide a marriage license or a certified marriage certificate from the jurisdiction where your marriage is registered. However, if you are married in another country, we will need a certified translation of the marriage certificate. Page 2 of the required documents explains who qualifies as a certified translator. If you are unable to provide proof, you may be asked to sign a declaration detailing the reason why you could not produce the required document or documents. This will usually result in additional documentation. Keep in mind that this usually pertains to members who are married outside of the country and are unable to obtain the documents identified above. If you are married or divorced in the United States, you are required to submit the documents. Your spouse or domestic partner only need to provide information about their previous marriages. No documents are required. Divorce documents. Members sometimes have trouble obtaining them. The documents may have been lost in a move or misplaced. Should this be the case, you will need to obtain a conformed copy stamped by the court. Let's move on to proof of birth. Birth certificates. All members, spouses, and domestic partners are required to provide a document that establishes their date of birth. The following documents may be used to prove your date of birth: birth certificate, a baptismal document, naturalization papers, passport card, military form DD-214, or a residency card. If any of the above are unavailable, you may be able to provide 2 of the following: affidavit from a mother or father must be notarized. Affidavit from family members or friends must be notarized. This person must be older than you. Your children's birth certificates must list your age or date of birth. School records must list your age or date of birth. Marriage license must list your age or date of birth, or a Social Security statement with your date of birth. The application. Now let's review your LACER Service Retirement Application for the City's Separation Incentive Program, also referred as CSIP. I will review and highlight the most important information on the form. The upper part of the application is your basic personal information: name, Social Security number, department and classification, and your address and other contact information. Section 2 is regarding your marital status and your spouse or domestic partner's name and date of birth. This information is important because the estimate you receive in your packet will be based on your date of birth and your spouse or domestic partner's date of birth, which directly impacts the calculation of your benefit and their benefit upon your death. We will review this a little later in the presentation. Section 3 has questions about reciprocity, military information, and Labor's International Union of North America, also known as LIUNA. Reciprocity is when you have an agreement with LACERS and a reciprocal agency where you can use your years of service to meet eligibility requirements, and both agencies will use your highest salary to calculate your benefit. You must also retire from both agencies on the same date. If you are unfamiliar with this term, you most likely have not established reciprocity. Questions 1 and 2 in this section help LACERS comply with the Internal Revenue rules and instructions for your retirement benefit. In this section, you should identify your time with the military and your time and estimated benefit with LIUNA or the hiring hall. In Section 4, the retirement effective date area. As stipulated in the CSIP agreement, retirement effective dates are determined and scheduled at the discretion of LACERS. Therefore, please continue to follow your employing department's reporting policy. Your retirement date is listed below. Do not report to work on or after your retirement date. At the top of the second page, please write your name. Section 5 is the collection of missing contributions. There's a number of reasons why a member can have missing contributions. If you are missing contributions, the Controller's Office will be notified and they will contact you about possible payments. In Section 6, other important information goes over various items you need to understand. Number 1, as a CSIP participant, your retirement date is irrevocable. Number 2, Charter 1164 does not allow you to be reemployed with the city except for a few exceptions. We will go over that in a bit. Number 3, having a prearrangement with the city to return that is permitted under Charter 1164 can incur excise tax penalties. Number 4, your CSIP agreement requires if, within 3 years from the date that your retirement becomes effective, you are employed in any capacity by or receive a personal services contract from any city agency, including proprietary departments, you agree to return the monetary compensation paid by the city under the CSIP by A, the full amount if you return within 12 months of the separation date, or B, a prorated amount if you return after 12 months but within 36 months of the separation date based on the time elapsed since the effective date or your resignation, retirement, or separation. Any questions or concerns regarding City SIP reemployment restrictions should be directed to the City Administrative Office. Number 5, if you have an incomplete service purchase contract, you will need to pay it off prior to your retirement. If it is not paid, then the amount you paid will be prorated. It is your responsibility to pay off the amount prior to your retirement effective date. Number 6, if you have reciprocity, it is important that you retire from all agencies on the same retirement date. We will go over this again, and if you have reciprocity, you should speak with your counselor for more assistance and information. Number 7, required documents are extremely important. If you fail to provide the necessary documents, it will not delay your retirement, but it will delay your retirement payroll. At the top of page 3, please enter your name again. Number 8, sick and vacation payouts are processed by your department. All questions should be directed to your employing department payroll or HR office. Number 9, your retirement is subject to change if there is a community property division or other legal matters that impact your retirement benefits. Number 10, please be advised that if you are or are planning to seek administrative remedy involving your reemployment, your retirement may impact that process or proceeding. Section 7 is a disclaimer. The disclaimer explains that Lacers has instituted an estimated retirement allowance benefit setup protocol. The allowance you receive may require an adjustment in the future. Please be aware that the adjustment to your allowance, if required, may take several months, but you will be notified in writing. Lastly, you will need to provide your last 4 digits of your Social Security number or employee ID, your signature, and date. Member Information Form. The Member Information Sheet provides a summary of your personal demographic information, such as your name, address, marital status, previous marriages, children, and living parents. This form does not designate benefits to anyone. Make sure to keep this form handy, as you will need it when you are electing beneficiaries and completing other forms. Next, we'll be going over the Affidavit of Identity. The Affidavit of Identity form is required for members and their spouses or domestic partners. The affidavit form for the member will identify your legal name and any other names you have used. On line 1, you will provide your name as you use it for legal purposes, city records, taxes, and other legal matters. On line 2, you should list all names you have used in legal documents, including birth certificate, passport, driver's license, divorce documents, previous marriages, and other identifying documents. Please be sure to use all variations of your name. For example, if your birth given name is John James Smith, but have used a variation such as John J. Smith, John Smith, or if you used your middle name as your first, you would include James John Smith, James J. Smith, and James Smith. Any document you submit to Lacers with your name appearing differently should be recorded here. Do not forget to include your maiden name. On line 3, please list your Social Security number. On line 4, list any different Social Security number you have used in the past. On line 5, please enter your legal address, not your P.O. box, your physical address. The address should be your current address. If you plan to move soon, you will need to submit a change of address form. On line 6, please enter your birth date. On line 7, under normal circumstances, we require the document be notarized. Although we prefer it to be notarized, we understand if you are unable to. If there's no notary, please provide a valid government-issued ID and your city ID. If there is no notary, we may request it from you at a later time. On line 8 is a statement attesting that you are not falsifying information, and if you are, that you will be held accountable. In the next area, please sign your name, print your name, and provide a contact phone number. The bottom half of the form is for the notary. The affidavit for your spouse or domestic partner is the same, except for questions 3 and 9, which connects your spouse to you. If your counselor finds any discrepancies with this form compared to city records or other documents submitted, you will be asked to send a signed statement with the added names and/or information. Dissolutions and community property divisions. Community property. Pensions are considered community property and subject to division by the court. After reviewing your divorce documents with the legal processing unit, your assigned counselor will contact you to discuss whether your former spouse or domestic partner is entitled to a portion of your retirement allowance. If you provide inaccurate information, you will be held financially liable and responsible for any unpaid community property payments lacers must provide. Any unpaid amounts will be deducted from your retirement allowance. Marital declarations. Next, I will review the marital status declaration form. You can use the member information sheet to input some of the dates and names needed. Before we get started, you want to make sure you have the correct form. If you are married, you should have the married form, and if you are single, you should have the single form. Let's go over the married form. Enter your Social Security number, followed by your name, and then your spouse or domestic partner's name, followed by the date, city, and state where you were married or registered your domestic partnership. The next area is where you will list any previous marriages for yourself. It is very important to understand that you must provide all previous marital information and proof of divorce or death, even if it's prior to your city career. Be certain to include the date of dissolution or the date of death. The following section is for your spouse or domestic partner's previous marriages. Although we do not require documentation for their previous marriages or partnerships, we do require the information be listed here. At the bottom of the form, you will need to sign and date this form. It's important to note that the signature and date on the form is a little different than other forms you may have completed. You will need to enter the day, followed by the month, then the year, and finally, the city and state. Now we can go over the single marital status form. Start by entering your Social Security number, followed by your name. The following area is where you will list any previous marriages for yourself. It is very important to understand that you must provide all previous marital information and proof of divorce or death, even if it's prior to your city career. Be certain to include the date of dissolution or the date of death. At the bottom of the form, you will need to sign and date this form. It's important to note that the signature and date on the form is a little different than other forms you may have completed. You will need to enter the day, followed by the month, then the year, and finally the city and state. If lacers is presented with a claim against your retirement benefit, you will be responsible to pay any and all costs incurred by lacers. Retiree Questionnaire. The questionnaire for new retirees form is a quick list of questions that will assist your counselor with basic information about your employment that could impact your retirement. The majority of the questions are yes or no. There are a few where you can respond, don't know. If anything is unclear, you can contact your counselor for clarification. Please sign, date, and list at least the last 4 numbers of your Social Security number. Direct deposits. The direct deposit form instructs and provides lacers the authority to send your monthly benefit to a savings or checking account of your choice. Although this is not required, it is highly recommended. It's important to understand that your department does not share your current direct deposit bank information with lacers. You will need to submit this form if you wish to have your check deposited into your bank account. If you do not submit it, you will receive a physical check in the mail. At the top of the form, you will fill in your basic information. Next, select Begin Direct Deposit. In the middle section of this form, you will check whether you want your benefit to be deposited into a checking account or a savings account. If you elect a checking account, you will need to include a voided check. No deposit slips are accepted. If you do not have checks, You can have your financial institution provide you with a written document with all the necessary information about your checking account. If you elect a savings account, you will need to have a bank officer sign this form or have your financial institution provide a written document with all the necessary information. At the bottom of the first page, please enter your routing number and account number. On the second page, you will need to complete your bank information and the joint account holder section if applicable. The contact in the event of death is optional. Your signature, address, and phone number is required to process this form. Any change requires submitting a new form. You cannot use a bank account that does not include your name. You must be on the account. You can obtain the form online at lacers.org or contact our office and we will mail it to you. The last form in Part 1 is a request for taxpayer identification number and certification. This form is for you and your spouse or domestic partner. Lacers is required to obtain this information for tax verification purposes. Please complete the top area of this form with your name as you use it with the city and legally. Next, please check off individual, as the other options do not apply. Following this area, you will need to complete your address. Please use your physical address. Do not use a P.O. Box address for this form. In Part 1, you need to enter your Social Security number. In Part 2, you need to sign and date this form. Service and service credit purchases. All service contracts must be paid off prior to your retirement effective date. If not paid in full, Lacers will prorate your service based on the amount you have paid and credit your account accordingly. If you would like to know your contract payoff amount, you may contact Lacers and request a cash settlement. If you have not previously submitted a request to purchase service credit and you feel you qualify for such a purchase, you will not have sufficient time to process your request prior to your retirement effective date. Only service credit purchases for city time will be considered for processing due to non-city service credit purchases requiring 8 to 10 months to complete. Now let's go over the reciprocity information sheet. We mentioned this in Part 1 several times. Lacers established a reciprocal agreement with California Public Employees Retirement System, CalPERS, that enables members to receive retirement benefits when retiring from certain other reciprocal California government entities and the City of Los Angeles at the same time. There are two types of reciprocity, full and limited. Full reciprocity allows your salary and years to be used for retirement. Limited only uses your salary. Your years will not be used. In order to establish reciprocity, you will need to move from one agency to the next within 6 months. You must leave your contributions on account with all agencies. You must apply for reciprocity with all agencies and have them approved. You must be eligible to retire from all agencies and retire with the same retirement date. If you have reciprocity, you will need to work closely with your counselor to assure that everything is in order. If you do not have reciprocity, do not worry about this information sheet. You can line it out to remind you that it does not apply to you. Next, I will go over the notice regarding possible missing retirement contributions. This also was covered in Part 1 on your retirement application. Upon receiving your application for retirement, your account will be audited for missing contributions. If you are missing contributions, the Controller's Office will be notified and will contact you about possible payments. Missing contributions occur when the wrong amount or no amount is deducted from your pay, making your retirement funds incomplete. This can occur when you are paid in a lump sum, received an emergency check, or any other issue where the contributions were not collected or incorrectly calculated. Part 3 is a section you are most interested in because we will go over the calculation of your benefit. We will cover retirement effective date, calculating your allowance, payroll, and payment selections. Your retirement effective date and your first retirement allowance payment. Your last department check will be issued in the pay period following your last period of compensation. Your first retirement check is typically issued at the end of the month following your retirement effective date. The first check will be prorated and may be larger than your subsequent allowance payments. All future retirement checks will be issued at the end of each month. Let's take a look at the city's payroll calendar to better understand how your retirement effective date will impact your first retirement check. Your first retirement pay will be prorated and will be larger than your following checks that will be paid on the last business day of the month. Keep in mind that your department usually issues your sick and vacation time payout after your last department check and before your first retirement check. Now let's look at your retirement date. If your retirement date is November 7th, your last department check will be November 18th, and your first retirement pay will be at the end of December. If your retirement date is December 5th, your last department check will be December 16th, and your first retirement pay will be at the end of January. Let's look at a few more retirement dates. If your retirement date is January 2nd, your last department check will be on January 13th, and your first retirement check will be at the end of February. If your retirement date is February 13th, your last department check will be on February 24th, and your first retirement check will be at the end of March. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the information provided is assuming you submit all the necessary documents and forms in a timely manner. Not submitting the necessary documents in a timely manner will result in a payroll delay. Sick and vacation time payment. Sick and vacation time payouts are not retirement benefits and are not paid by LACERS. Questions regarding these payments should be directed to your employing department. Deferred compensation may allow for sick and vacation time rollovers. Please inquire with them directly for more information. It's important to understand that sick and vacation time payouts are taxable income. If you're going to receive a generous amount, you may want to consider rolling over your funds to your deferred compensation account. Please contact VOIA for more information. Now let's explain the formula for a normal retirement. The formula consists of 3 components: final compensation, service credit, and the retirement factor. Final compensation is your highest consecutive 12 months of pay. Service credit is the time you accrue when you are compensated by the city and LACERS receives contributions for that time. The retirement factor is 2.16%. In order to determine your monthly allowance, you will need to multiply your final compensation by your service credit and then by the retirement factor of 2.16%. This will provide you with your gross monthly allowance. Now that you know how to calculate your monthly benefit, we can go over your payment options. There are 2 payment options. One is a cash refund annuity, and the other one is a life annuity option. It's important to understand that both are a lifetime benefit for you and upon your death, the lifetime of your eligible spouse or domestic partner, and in some cases, your designated continuance beneficiary. Let's go over the 2 payment options. Cash refund annuity. After your death and the death of your eligible spouse or domestic partner, your designated beneficiaries will receive the remainder of your unused contributions. Life annuity. The money in your contribution account will be used to increase your monthly service allowance. After your death and the death of your eligible spouse or domestic partner, what's left of your unused contributions will not go to a beneficiary. Again, both payments provide a lifetime benefit to you and, if applicable, to your eligible spouse or domestic partner, or in some cases, your designated continuance recipient. The next topic is the continuance benefit and survivor contributions. Before going further, it's important to understand that a continuance is a lifetime benefit left to your eligible spouse, domestic partner, or a continuance recipient at the time of your death. I will first start off by explaining a continuance to an eligible spouse or domestic partner, then go over a continuance for a single member or a member with an ineligible spouse or domestic partner. Continuance for an eligible spouse or domestic partner benefit. A portion of your retirement contributions is designated as survivor contributions and provides a continuance benefit to your eligible spouse or domestic partner upon your death. The continuance is paid to your eligible spouse or domestic partner for the rest of their life. The continuance is funded at 50% of your retirement allowance. You may elect a larger percentage, but a lifetime reduction will be applied to your allowance in order to provide the increased continuance percentage. Let me define what an eligible spouse or an eligible domestic partner is. To be an eligible spouse or an eligible domestic partner, you must be married or in a partnership for at least 1 year prior to your retirement date. For domestic partnerships, you must have the partnership on file at LACERS, the county, or the state 1 year prior to your retirement effective date. If you only have a city employees benefit domestic partnership on file, you will need to provide a copy to LACERS and submit a LACERS domestic partnership prior to your retirement date. Now let's go on to survivor contribution funds and options for single members or married members with an ineligible spouse or domestic partner. If you are single or married with an ineligible spouse or domestic partner, when you retire, you have options for the funds set aside for an eligible spouse domestic partner continuance. You can take a lump sum cash payment. You can apply the funds to increase your retirement allowance. Let's go over a continuance option for single members or members with an ineligible spouse or domestic partner. A single member or married member with an ineligible spouse may elect to leave a continuance to one person. An irrevocable lifetime reduction will be applied to your monthly benefit even if the continuance beneficiary predeceases you. No adjustment will or can be made to your allowance once your retirement is effective. Ineligible spouses do not receive a house subsidy after the member's death. Optional retirement allowance election. The next item to cover is an option that is not available to all, but it is important to review in the event it may be something you need to consider. The optional retirement allowance is an option for a unique situation where a member may not have a long life expectancy soon after retirement and has more than one minor child or multiple parents that they are responsible for financially. Although it allows to leave a continuance to more than one person, it has limitations and requirements. Let me go over a few of them. You must be single. A continuance election will incur a reduction. Elections are irrevocable on your retirement effective date. Continuance to one or more minor children are limited. Unused contributions, if any, will be distributed equally among your children after the last child reaches age 18. Continuance to a parent requires you to provide proof that you are responsible for at least one half of the necessary living expenses for your dependent parents. The acknowledgement form election to provide an optional retirement allowance provides detailed information on what I previously summarized. On the second page of the form, you will need to sign and date the form, even if you do not fit the criteria. We want everyone to acknowledge that they have received this information. Now that you have a little more information about retirement, it's time to review the estimate worksheet in your packet. I'll be going over the single estimate first, then the married estimate. Let's take a look at the single estimate. The top portion of this estimate provides your name, service credit, city service, final compensation, date of birth, purchases, and other member information. The next section is a disclaimer. At the bottom of the first page is the service information. This area will provide your total years of service credit and may include a breakdown of your time. On the top portion of the second page is your benefit calculation. This area breaks down your retirement calculation. You will see your final compensation, service credit, retirement factor, your monthly allowance, and if applicable, your reduction factor. The next area is a designation for continuance. If you are single or have an ineligible spouse or domestic partner, this area will be blank. If you later choose to have a beneficiary to receive a lifetime benefit, a new estimate will be needed with the designated beneficiary information. The following area is the retirement allowance options and amounts. Here is where you will see the cash refund annuity, which would match the benefit calculation amount above. The life annuity will show the increased amount, which is based on your age and life expectancy. You will also see the survivor contribution amount if you decide to request a refund. It also shows the increases to the cash refund and life annuity if you choose to leave the contributions on account. If you decide to request a refund of the survivor contributions, you will need to complete an additional form. Now let's review the Married Estimate worksheet. The top portion of the estimate provides your name, service credit, city service, final compensation, date of birth, service purchases, and other information. Following this section is a disclaimer. At the bottom of the first page is the service information. This area will provide your total years of service credit and may include a breakdown of your time. At the top portion of the second page is your benefit calculation. This area breaks down your retirement calculation. You will see your final compensation, service credit, retirement factor, and monthly allowance, and if applicable, your reduction factor. The next area is a designation for continuance. In this area, your spouse's information should be listed. Be sure to verify the date of birth. If it is incorrect, the calculations will be incorrect. The following area is the retirement allowance options and amounts. Here is where you will see the cash refund annuity, which would match the benefit calculation amount above. The life annuity will show the increased amount, which is based on both you and your spouse's age and life expectancy. Immediately following, you will see an area that includes continuance percentages ranging from 50 to 100%. It is also divided by cash refund annuity and life annuity. The cash refund is on the left-hand side and the life annuity is on the right-hand side. As I mentioned before, the 50% continuance to your spouse is built into the retirement plan and is provided to your spouse with no reduction to your monthly allowance. Any percentage beyond 50% will incur a lifetime reduction to your monthly retirement allowance. Option selections. Now that you have a better understanding of your payment options, continuances, and survivor benefit funds, we can review the retirement option form where you will make your elections. I will review the form for single members first and then for married members. The option selections for single members has 3 steps. First, you will need to enter your name, last 4 numbers of your Social Security number, and your retirement effective date. Each selection you make must be initialed. Step 1 is where you will select your payment option, cash refund or life annuity. Step 2 is where you will select what to do with your refund of survivor benefit funds. You can request a refund or apply the amount to increase your monthly amount. Step 3 is where you decide if you want a continuance to a beneficiary. This is not mandatory. It's important to understand that electing a continuance results in a permanent reduction to your benefit. You will have an opportunity to elect a beneficiary to receive any funds left in your account after your death. If you are serious about leaving one person a lifetime benefit at the time of your death, you need to know how much of a reduction will be placed on your benefit. In order to do that, your counselor will need to have some information about your potential continuance beneficiary, like date of birth, name, and relationship. It is also important to understand that there may be Internal Revenue Code limitations placed on any non-marital continuances. Again, it's important to understand that each selection must be initialed. All forms missing initials will be returned, which may result in delays to your payroll. I'll be reading the last section of the form. Number 1, no adjustment will be made to your allowance even if your continuance beneficiary predeceases you. All options become irrevocable upon your retirement effective date. Number 3, continuances are non-transferable. If you later marry or enter into a domestic partnership, your new spouse or domestic partner will not receive a continuance benefit. Lastly, please sign and date the form. The distribution election form is for single members who decided to receive a refund of their survivor contributions. Please complete the top portion of this form and enter the amount of your survivor contributions. This amount can be found on your estimate worksheet. If you decided to keep the funds on account and increase your benefit, you do not need to complete this form. Your options are refund, direct rollover, or partial rollover refund. You will also need to elect if you want California taxes withheld. Please sign and date the form. If you elect a direct rollover or a partial rollover refund, the form will need to be completed by the financial institution receiving the funds before it can be submitted to LACERS. Now let's review the retirement option selection form for married or domestic partnerships. There are 2 steps to complete. First, you will need to enter your name, last 4 numbers of your Social Security number, and your retirement effective date. Step 1, select your payment option, cash refund or life annuity. Step 2, elect your eligible spouse or domestic partner and the percentage of the continuance. The plan provides a 50% continuance to your spouse or domestic partner at the time of your death with no cost or reduction to your monthly allowance. You can elect to leave more than 50%, but you will incur a reduction to provide the increase. Each selection must be initialed. All forms missing initials will be returned, which may result in delays to your payroll. I'll be reading the last section of this form. Number 1, no adjustment will be made to your allowance even if your continuance beneficiary predeceases you. Number 2, all options become irrevocable upon your retirement effective date. Number 3, continuances are not transferable. If you later marry or enter into a domestic partnership, your new spouse or domestic partner will not receive a continuance benefit. In order for your spouse or domestic partner to receive the continuance amount, you must be married or domestic partners at the time of your death. Please sign and date the form. Part 4. We'll be going over beneficiary forms, tax information, and tax elections. Beneficiary forms. The first form we will be going over is a designation of beneficiary for unused contributions and accrued payments. Before we get started, you want to keep your member information sheet close by to help you complete this form. You will be designating beneficiaries who will receive any unused contributions and accrued payments. Unused contributions are funds that you contributed and are used monthly to pay your monthly allowance. These funds usually last 16 to 18 years. If you have a continuance recipient, this person, whether it is your spouse, domestic partner, or other, will receive the benefit before any payouts are made to a beneficiary. The payout of the unused contributions are only for members who elected a cash refund annuity option. If you chose the life annuity option, the funds, if any, left at the time of your death and the death of your spouse or elected continuance recipient are forfeited to LACERS in exchange for an increase to your monthly benefit. Accrued payments is the last payment owed to you at the time of your death prorated. These funds are applicable to both a cash refund annuity or a life annuity payment. Again, if you have a continuance beneficiary, this person, whether it's your spouse, domestic partner, or other, will receive the benefit before any payouts are made. Now let's go over primary and secondary beneficiaries. You have the option to elect primary and secondary beneficiaries. You can choose any combination. Whether you elect one primary and two secondary beneficiaries, or if you want two primary and no secondary beneficiaries. If you designate more than one person for each section, the payment will be divided equally. The payment will not be paid to your secondary beneficiaries if your primary beneficiaries are paid out. Now let's go over who can be a beneficiary. Anyone aside from your continuance recipient can be elected as a beneficiary. You can also designate to have an organization or a trust as a beneficiary. If you elect an organization, you will need to provide the name, address, phone number, and contact name. If you elect a trust, Lacers will need to have a copy of the title page and the signature page. Now let's go over the form. You will start off by completing your name and social security number. Next, designate your primary and secondary beneficiaries. Sign both the first and second page of the form. If you do not elect a secondary beneficiary, then please place a line across this area or write in "not applicable." You should still sign at the bottom of the second page. It is important to understand that if you have an eligible spouse or domestic partner, do not designate them as a beneficiary. They are automatically going to receive a lifetime benefit upon your death. If they predecease you, then the beneficiaries will be paid out as you designate. This form is needed whether you elect a cash refund annuity or a life annuity payment option. Both option payments will need to be paid out upon your death and the death of your continuance recipient, if applicable. While Social Security numbers are not mandatory, it does aid Lacers in identifying and/or locating your beneficiaries. In some cases, members provide their own address for their grown children, being that their address may not be constant or permanent. Please be aware that any benefit overpayments that Lacers cannot collect will be deducted from benefits payable to your beneficiaries. These designations are not irrevocable. You can change them at any time. You can obtain the form online or contact Lacers for a new form. In the future, you can check lacers.org for new ways to update your designated beneficiaries. Now let's go over the designation for funeral expense allowance. Again, before we get started, you want to keep your member information sheet close by. The funeral expense allowance is a benefit that provides $2,500 to your beneficiaries at the time of your death. Unlike the accrued and unused beneficiary form that we just completed, this beneficiary form does not automatically go to your eligible spouse or domestic partner. If you want your eligible spouse or domestic partner to be the primary beneficiary, you will need to designate them as a sole primary beneficiary. Designating more than one beneficiary will split the payment equally amongst the beneficiaries elected. Let's go over the primary and secondary beneficiaries. You have the option to designate primary and secondary beneficiaries. You can choose any combination of the beneficiaries, whether you designate one primary and two secondary, or if you want two primary and no secondary beneficiaries. If you designate more than one person for each section, the payment will be divided equally. The payment will not be paid to your secondary beneficiaries if your primary beneficiaries are paid out. Now let's go over who can be a beneficiary. Anyone can be elected as a beneficiary. You can also elect to have an organization or a trust as a beneficiary. If you designate an organization, you will need to provide the name, address, phone number, and contact name. If you elect a trust, Lacers will need to have a copy of the title page and signature page. Let's go over the form now. You will start off by completing your name and social security number. Next, designate your primary beneficiary or beneficiaries. Next, designate your secondary beneficiaries. Sign both the first and second page of the form. If you don't designate a secondary beneficiary, then please place a line across this area or write in "not applicable." You should still sign and date the bottom of the second page. Other information you need to know is that although Social Security numbers are not mandatory, as mentioned earlier, they do aid lacers in locating your designated beneficiaries. In some cases, members provide their own address for their grown children, being that their address may not be constant or permanent. Beneficiaries are not required to show proof that funds were used towards funeral expenses. These designations are not irrevocable. You can change them at any time. You can obtain the form online or contact lacers for a new form. Taxability notice and tax withholding. Taxability of lacers retirement allowance. The taxability of lacers retirement allowance form explains that your retirement benefit is taxable, but if you have post-tax funds, meaning some amount in your funds has already been taxed, it cannot be taxed again. Usually when we say this, people tend to think that their benefit will not be taxed. This is not the case. Even if you have some funds that have already been taxed, most, if not all, have not been taxed. Therefore, you will not see a huge amount being excluded from taxes. After you retire, you will receive a safe harbor worksheet that will help spell out if you have any funds that are post-tax, and if so, it will break down how you will receive it in the first year and the coming years. You may be wondering how this will impact your tax filing. Every year, as an active employee, you received a W-2, but as a retiree, you will receive a 1099, and it will include your taxable income and earned income, which will differ if you had any funds already taxed. The safe harbor provided is informational. The 1099 is what you will use to file your taxes. Now let's review the tax withholding form. The form instructs lacers how to withhold both state and federal taxes for your lacer's monthly allowance. You will start at the top of the form by completing your information. Your address cannot be a P.O. box. It must be your physical address. If you provide a P.O. box, your deductions will be defaulted to married with 3 withholdings. You can have a P.O. box with lacers for all your correspondence by submitting a change of address form. We will go over that later in the presentation. Right after your information, you will need to check off the box Service Retirement. The other options do not apply to you. On the left-hand side, you will complete the federal tax withholdings. The options are 1. Withhold using a tax table. You will need to choose marital status, then the number of withholdings, and next, indicate if you want additional funds deducted. Number 2, you can choose to not withhold taxes. With this option, you will need to deal with the federal government directly. Number 3, no change is not available as a new retiree. This form is also used to update your elections once you are retired. Do not select this option. The state withholdings is on the right-hand side. The following are the options. Number 1, use a tax table like I described for the federal section. Or, number 2, choose to withhold a flat dollar amount. Or, number 3, do not withhold taxes and deal with the state directly. As I mentioned before, number 4, the no change is not available as a new retiree. This form is used to update your elections once you are retired. Do not select this option. When you submit future changes, you can choose to change one and not the other. Additional information you need to know. Your city elections are not shared or transferred to lacers. Lacers cannot instruct you on your elections. Please consult with your tax advisor for guidance. If you do not submit this form in a timely manner, lacers will set up your benefit as married with 3 withholding as a default until we receive a new form. The The default of merit with 3 withholdings will also apply if you use a P.O. box instead of a physical address. If you elect not to withhold state taxes due to moving out of the state, please discuss this with a tax consultant in the state you are moving to for guidance and instructions. You can change your elections at any time. This form can be found at lacers.org and can be mailed to you. We will be going over the larger annuity purchase option. Before we go over the larger annuity option, I would like to provide some basic information about this program. The larger annuity purchase option is an option that can supplement your retirement. If you have funds with Lacer's larger annuity or have other funds, you may be able to purchase an annuity that would provide a lifetime benefit. Here's some important information about the program. Your purchase would be annuitized for a lifetime monthly allowance. The annuitized amount is based on the amount you purchase, your age, the age of your continuance recipient, as well as both your life expectancies. Your benefit would receive an annual fixed increase of 3%. The first year would be prorated for the whole months you were retired. The following years would be 3%. A continuance to any person can be provided regardless of your marital status. The Internal Revenue Code imposes limitations depending on the amount you are purchasing, your age, the age of the continuance recipient, and your retirement monthly allowance. If you use pre-tax funds from deferred compensation or another retirement savings account, there is generally no limitations. If you are using post-tax funds, you cannot purchase more than you have earned in the calendar year you are retiring in, and it cannot be more than $57,000. This benefit is not FDIC insured. The city is self-insured. It is strongly recommended that you consult with a financial advisor to determine if this option is for you. Please take a look at the larger annuity sample estimate. Roughly, this benefit provides about $50 monthly for every $10,000 purchased for someone 55 years of age. If interested in this benefit, you will need to communicate this to your counselor so they can run an estimate based on all your information. Consider before you purchase. Purchase is irrevocable. You no longer have access to your funds. Interest and earnings no longer apply, and it is not federally insured. Larger annuity purchase deadlines. Applications must be received by Lacers prior to your retirement effective date. Funds not coming from deferred compensation must be received by Lacers prior to your retirement effective date. Wire instructions are available upon request. If you are using deferred compensation funds to purchase your larger annuity, please complete all the necessary paperwork required by VOIA. Other important information. In this next section, we will go over some reading material that you can read at your leisure and refer to when you need information about topics covered in this section. A cost of living adjustment, or COLA, is determined by Lacers by May 1st every year and is based on the Consumer Price Index for the Los Angeles area. The possible increase is applied every July 1st. As a new retiree, you will receive a proration of the full months you retired in the fiscal year. Thereafter, you will receive the full amount. The amount can be anywhere between 0 to 3%. If it is determined to be more than 3%, the overage will be banked in your account for any following years where the amount is under 3%. Now let's review the Social Security benefit and offset for Lacers retirees. If you are qualified to receive a Social Security retirement benefit, it may be reduced due to your Lacers pension. Lacers does not administer this benefit. The Social Security Administration may reduce your Social Security benefits depending on several variables unique to your own situation. Please contact them for more information. The next form, Health Information Sheet, provides valuable information about your health coverage. You can use this form as a reference. Lacers Health Unit is also available to assist you. Now let's review the Los Angeles City Charter 1164. Restrictions on city employment. Charter 1164 does not allow you to return to the city as an active employee and contribute to LACERS. You are allowed to work 120 days per fiscal year if your former department hires you for a special task or skill set, or you can return as an elected official. Now let's review LACERS reemployment form. There are internal revenue codes that apply to our defined benefit. One is that there must be time between your retirement effective date and your agreement to return to work. The time needed is based on your retirement eligibility. If you retire under the normal retirement eligibility, you may not have a waiting time. If you retire under an early retirement eligibility, you will have a waiting period of 90 days. Returning to work can result in voiding or suspending your retirement benefit, and you could incur tax consequences. Please enter your name at the top of the form and answer question number 2 and complete the top part of the second page with the information requested. Let's review the Excess Benefit Program fact sheet. This document provides information regarding Internal Revenue Code limitations that can apply to some members. In simple terms, the Internal Revenue Code provision can limit the amount of your retirement benefit. Fortunately, if you fall into this category, the city would be able to offset the amount limited and pay you through the controllers. You will be made whole by receiving a LACERS check and a city check. Keep in mind that the controller's check would be considered income earned like you receive now. How that impacts your tax filing is something you would need to discuss with your tax advisor. This usually does not impact the greater amount of retirees. It usually impacts higher income members. The following are the factors used to determine who falls into this category: higher income, age, service purchases, and years of service. If you fall into this category, you will be notified. Award letters. If you need an award letter for a purchase, it is important to understand that LACERS cannot issue it to you until you have been set up for payroll. Change of address form. We've mentioned this form throughout the presentation. Please use this form if you need to update your address, including adding a correspondence address. You can obtain this form online at lacers.org or call into our office and request one to be mailed to you. The last form, the information for retiree, is the form your counselor will use to return copies of all your retirement documents submitted. It will identify if you have any pending documents or outstanding issues. You only need to add your name on the first page and sign the second page. Do not complete any other area of the form. The information on this form also reminds you of some of the topics we discussed. In addition, please be aware that all voluntary deductions will stop when you retire. You will need to contact all agencies to find out what you can continue if you choose to. This includes payments deducted for loans and other voluntary deductions. We included some numbers, but it's important to take a good look at your check and see if you have any deductions you would like to continue. If so, reach out to those agencies. Final reminders. Let's do a quick recap. Final reminders. The payment date for your first retirement check cannot be changed to an earlier date. Failure to turn in all required documents prior to your retirement effective date may delay your first retirement check. Significant payroll delays may impact health coverage. Documents altered with whiteout will be rejected and returned. Service purchases must be completed prior to your retirement effective date. You will receive copies of all your documents in the mail along with a copy of the information for retiree form that you signed. This concludes our presentation. Health information will follow under a separate cover. Please look out for an email with a link. If you need assistance before then, you can reach out to our health unit by emailing them at lacers.health@lacers.org. You can find this email address on the health information sheet we reviewed earlier today.